Good morning. I'm Cannon Camp. This is Todd Burnette, and we're both with JLL in Fort Worth, and we're here to talk about the office market. So we'll get right into it.
So, keeping with the film theme, we got a long way to go and a short time to get there to cover all the topics. And one of the things we're going to start and kick this off is obviously in the last 24 months in the office market, we've been going through a downturn. And we thought it would be interesting to compare it to one of the previous downturns. And so what we picked was the downturn in 2008, 2009. And for those in the audience, who was in the real estate business in 2008? Raise your hand. All right. For those that were not, I'm going to go over a few points in 2008 on the market. In 2008, the first half of the year was really, really strong. And all of a sudden, one event was the Lehman Brothers failure occurred and the music stopped. Market chaos created the Great Recession, and what we saw is we lost over 100,000 jobs in DFW. The market added a lot of sublease space across DFW. The highest Class A rate at that time was $30 a foot. Dow fell 53%, and it was one of the best tenant markets that we've seen in a long time. And I don't know if they have any Jimmy Buffett fans out there. Jimmy Buffett wrote a song in 2008 called "We Got a Lot to Drink About." Now, as we move into what we've just experienced, I think you're going to see something from Cannon that's totally different than what we experienced in 2008, 2009.
Yeah, so in the last couple of years, it's really been challenging, and it started really back in 2020. So I think it's death by 1,000 paper cuts, and it started with the shutdown, which led to supply chain issues, and then we had the PPP, which led to inflation and increased construction costs, rising interest rates, which turned into pipeline constraints. It was harder for deals to pencil, and so we saw construction kind of come to a halt. Then, 2025 looked to be on a good start, and then we had tons of tariff talk. So, there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think, turbulent, I think, Sam, was a good word. We saw that in the office market too. But through all that, we did see some very positive things. New construction rents hit 75%, and we actually saw some new construction kick off. Overall rents increased, and even in the existing buildings. So this, unlike 2008 and 2009, this has really not been a tenant's market in most cases. So I think, Billy Bob would tell you that office isn't dead. It's just getting a rewrite. And, the overall theme is that deals are hard. And so we're working hard to get things done, and things are starting to happen, and we'll see more of that in 2026.
So to give you an insight of how the office market behaved, we want to first look at nationally. And I think what we saw was really interesting is the leasing activity grew quarter over quarter and to the highest quarterly volume since 2019. Vacancy declined for the first time in 7 years. National vacancy averaged just over 22%. Flight to quality was seen across the country as tenants were attracting employees and new employees back to the office. Since COVID, one of the things too that's been really interesting is there's been 150 million square feet of older product demolished or renovated for an alternative use. And that 150 million square feet accounts to 3 times the Tarrant County office market. So I think you're going to continue to see that, but that's a really interesting theme that's happened. Manhattan leads the nation for office investment sales as well as deals. And at the bottom of the page, there's fewer options out there and higher rates, which is one of the reasons why the market's behaved like it has.
And so to dive into Fort Worth, you know, we've got all the statistics for each submarket at the very end of the presentation, but didn't want to go through line by line. So you can download this and take a look at it later. So here are some of the major themes or highlights. Last year, we really saw renewals dominate activity. And, you know, we think that's because it is a tight market, especially in the areas and the types of buildings people are looking for. You know, absorption was negative 266,000 square feet, but you can attribute, there was one lease expiration in North Fort Worth that was 500,000 square feet. So if you take that out of the equation, we're really positive absorption. And in the Class A market, we did have 250,000 feet of positive net absorption. The Class A, the overall CBD vacancy is about 13%, which is really, really good. That's a top 5 market in the country for downtowns. And the lowest submarket vacancy in Tarrant County was Southwest Fort Worth, which is outside of downtown, going through the Cultural District and through Clear Fork, kind of inside the loop. So as a result, we've seen some rates continue to increase, and we've also seen new construction kick off in South and West Fort Worth. We'll talk about it in detail, but we've got a little over 300,000 square feet of new construction today, and 100,000 of that is totally spec. Today, let's go through just a couple of the major leases. So these were the top 8 leases signed last year. As you can see, defense spending with Lockheed continues to ramp up. They renewed 2 leases, one in North Fort Worth and one in Arlington. Fort Worth was 455,000 feet, and the Arlington lease was 175,000 feet. And then right before the end of the year, we had an oil and gas tenant in downtown sign a lease at 777 Main for 100,000 feet. Kelly Hart renewed their lease at City Center, and then JP Morgan announced their move to the Crescent West project, which is 70,000 feet. We also renewed Lawast and Smith & Nephew at Clear Fork, and then Deluxe, which is formerly First United Payment Systems, renewed their downtown lease at City Center. So the top 8 leases accounted for over 1 million square feet last year, but really only 2 relocations. The rest were renewals.
So one of the things I think was really interesting, the under construction buildings in Fort Worth, 369,000 feet, and the first one, I want you to hit the next one.
Yeah, sorry.
The first one is the Crescent West project, 170,000 feet. Again, JP Morgan Chase has taken 70,000 feet there. They've got 88,000 feet available for office, and then they have retail space on the first floor. The second building is the Van Zant by Goldenrod, and what's interesting about that is that building has kicked off 100% spec. They've got retail tenants working on the first floor, and they have several office tenants working on the building, but nothing has been announced yet. And then the third building on there is at Clear Fork, and that's where Wells Fargo will be moving into later this year. And what's interesting about that project is by the time it gets completed, it'll be at 88% leased, with only about 6,000 square feet available in the office portion of the building.
88% or better for the Cassco folks in the room. So on that note, since the South and West submarket is the tightest, we wanted to highlight a few proposed developments. That way, as your clients are looking for deals, it's on top of your mind. So the first, Clear Fork, there's a 2-building project at the Trailhead. So this is the southwest corner of the traffic circle near Press Cafe. It's 2 100,000-foot buildings, and that would kick off kind of a new phase of development down in that quadrant. Westside Village has a 100,000-foot building planned that we think will break ground later this quarter, probably. They're calling that one the Jewel Box. And then One University, this is a project we've talked about before. It's right across from the Modern Art Museum on University Drive. And it's a mixed-use project on that entire block, and it's got hotel, office, multifamily. So looking for lead tenants there. And then 2 more developments, back to Clear Fork and Westside Village. If you go across the street from the trailhead in the northwest corner of the traffic circle, they've got a 2-building project planned there that they would love to kick off, plus or minus 250,000 square feet. And then also Westside Village has a mass timber building that they've got planned that I think we'll hear more announcements about later this year. So just these 5 total projects would be about 850,000 square feet of new office, and we project rents would be in the probably high 70s to mid 80s per square foot gross. So new high water mark there.
Trends for 2026, we're going to hit 4 of them here, what we call the new normal, limited options in the market, downtown activity, and spec suites. So for office owners and developers, this might be the best slide in the deck for everybody. So the question is hybrid working? And what we've found out is it's really not. The new normal going forward is back to the office. And it's interesting on those pie charts in 2022, for the Fortune 100 companies, the average number of days in the office each week was just over 2. And in 2025, it's just over 4%. And I think you're going to continue to see that going forward, especially as companies realize they just don't get the productivity from their employees that are working in the hybrid model.
4 days a week. So we talked about limited availability, and so we wanted to give you just a quick example of what a 10,000 square foot Class A tenant is looking at. So today, this highlights areas of Tarrant County and how many buildings and how many options you really have. So as you can see, West Fort Worth is the tightest submarket. There's very limited options. Downtown, although from a vacancy standpoint, it's doing very well, they do have the most number of spaces and options. So 10 buildings, with multiple spaces probably within each building. As you go up to Alliance has got some new construction that they're ready to lease and several other second-gen options. And then Westlake and Southlake have 5 total buildings with several options as well. So, I think the key takeaway is that if you need space in West Fort Worth, it's very tight. Opportunities are downtown, west and north. Opportunities are north and northeast into Southlake. And what's interesting to me is generally a tenant is not looking at downtown and Southlake. They usually have the decision made that they either want to be downtown or in Southlake. So while this looks like a lot of buildings on the map here, tenants are really looking in more specific geographic areas. So we expect downtown to do really well in 2026. And then you've got the Crescent and the Van Zant coming to West Fort Worth in 2027. So on downtown, this is the downtown skyline. And so if you take a look at this, the light blue color indicates space that's already leased, so space that's not available. The dark blue color is sublease space. So to me, it's very encouraging. We don't have a lot of dark blue on any of these buildings. And then the tan color shows what's available for lease today. One thing to note on that is that some of these tan blocks of space are still occupied, but that tenant's either told the landlord they're not renewing or they're going to move, and so that the landlord's already marketing the space for lease. So just need to be careful when you look at some of these blocks of space. They may still be occupied, and timing may be an issue if you're looking for space in the near term.
One of the other areas that we think will be really important to watch in 26 and 27 as we go forward is downtown. What Cannon mentioned earlier is right now we have one of the lowest vacancies in the country in downtown in both Class A and Class B space. And while there will be some options coming available when J.P. Morgan moves to the Crescent project and when Wells Fargo moves to Clear Fork, we think that will only create opportunities for other tenants that need larger space to be downtown. And with everything that's going on with Texas A&M and their project, with the convention center expansion and with a number of other potential new announcements downtown, we expect a number of things going forward. And the area in green are development sites that are available today. The largest ownership is the top of the page, where Sundance controls 8+ blocks, and they're going to be looking at potential mixed use and corporate development to attract corporate companies to town. And we've seen a number of things across downtown, but A&M has really been the one that's kind of kicked it off and will continue to get activity downtown going forward.
So last trend we just wanted to hit on real quick, and this is something we've traditionally not seen a lot on this side of the Metroplex. Our counterparts in Dallas, you see it a lot more, but is spec suites. And so when you've got a space that is tired, a second generation space that's tired, we've seen landlords start to renovate these and to make ready suites. So the keys here are to have a number of different suites on a number of different sizes. Burnette Plaza is a great example. They did a full floor of spec suites that delivered last summer. 6 of the 8 spec suites are leased today and at higher rates than the rest of the building. So our forecast, I think the overall theme here is that we're very bullish and the best is yet to come for Fort Worth. But there are a couple of areas of concern. So we think Class B and C assets, unless they're very well located or very well amenitized, they're going to continue to struggle. The Airport Freeway submarket is particularly concerning because some of those buildings have not had the capital improvements or they're not located near amenities. So it's hard for landlords to justify the capital improvements. Also, limited quality space. I think we talked about that, but the good news is new space is coming. That's similar for corporate relocations. If you don't have the space, it's hard to land the corporate relocations. And then new to market deals. Last year we saw very few new to market deals. I think we all need to make a push on how we attract new business to Fort Worth. And then finish out costs are still high. So transactions to watch. I know we're out of time, Karen, so we're hurrying. Transactions to watch. So Texas A&M, I think there'll be new announcements there. EOG is in the market for their downtown office. That's 75,000 feet. I think they'll make a decision whether to relocate or renew in the coming months. We talked about Clear Fork and Westside Village. Downtown conversions. There's a handful of buildings downtown that are on the market for sale or currently being converted from office to either hospitality or residential, and I think we'll continue to see those. And then defense contractors, they continue to ramp up spending, so we expect those companies to grow and take more space. So the outlook or forecast for this year, and if we get this right, you can call me. If we get it wrong, you can call Todd. The new norm is that deals take longer. There's more stakeholders, more people involved. It's higher costs, so it just takes more layers of approvals to get deals done. Absorption, I think, will increase this year, and it'll be positive. Downtown CBD, I think, has a ton of momentum, and I think they'll have a great year. We'll continue to see rising rental rates because there is limited supply, and then I think we'll also see existing buildings start to bridge the gap or continue to bridge the gap between new construction and existing. And then I predict trophy office rates in the $80 a foot range. And then lastly, I'll predict that we have at least one major headquarter announcement in Fort Worth and probably West Fort Worth. And with that, I'll invite up Aaron Grizz to talk about opportunity zones and introduce our panel.